I walked into a luxury hotel looking like I'd just survived a hurricane. Because I had. My flight had been delayed 12 hours. My luggage was lost. I'd been traveling for 26 hours straight. I was exhausted, dirty, and desperate for a shower and a bed. The hotel manager took one look at me and decided I didn't belong there. She called security. She had me escorted out. She humiliated me in front of a lobby full of guests. She had no idea that I owned the hotel. That I bought it 3 weeks earlier. That I was there to evaluate the staff before announcing the ownership change. And by the time she figured it out, her career was already over. But before I tell you exactly how this woman went from confident manager to unemployed in less than 48 hours, I need you to do something. Hit that subscribe button right now, because this story has twists you won't see coming. Smash that like button if you've ever been judged by your appearance. And drop a comment telling me, have you ever been underestimated because of how you looked? Because what happened next is the definition of instant karma. Let's go back to the beginning. 3 months ago, in a corporate boardroom in San Francisco. My name is Morgan Blake. I'm the CEO and founder of Blake Hospitality Group. We acquire underperforming luxury hotels, turn them around, and either operate them profitably or sell them at a significant return. I started the company 7 years ago with money I'd saved working 80-hour weeks in hotel management. I was 25, ambitious, and convinced I could do it better than the people I'd worked for. Turned out, I was right. We'd successfully acquired and turned around 12 properties in 7 years. Our portfolio was worth north of $200 million. We had a reputation in the industry for identifying properties with potential and maximizing that potential through operational excellence and strategic positioning. The Grandview Hotel in Seattle had been on my radar for 2 years. It was a beautiful historic property in a prime location, walking distance from Pike Place Market, views of Elliott Bay, the kind of bones that made hotel investors drawl. But it was failing. Occupancy rates below 60%. Outdated systems. Staff turnover at 70% annually. Reviews complained about everything from rude service to maintenance issues to outdated amenities. The ownership group had run it into the ground through neglect and poor management. They were desperate to sell. We acquired it for $18 million, about 40% below market value for a property that size in that location. The plan was simple: spend $2 million on renovations and operational improvements, increase occupancy to 85% within a year, and either operate it profitably or flip it for $35 to $40 million. Standard playbook for us. The acquisition closed on a Tuesday. The previous owners had kept it quiet. They didn't want staff panicking about job security before the transition was finalized. The plan was for me to spend a week doing a quiet evaluation of operations, meet with department heads, then announce the ownership change and begin implementation of our improvement plan. I was supposed to arrive on Thursday evening, check in quietly, observe operations over the weekend, and begin formal meetings on Monday. That was the plan. Mother Nature had other ideas. My flight from San Francisco to Seattle was supposed to take 2 hours. Instead, it took 26. Severe weather. Multiple delays. A diversion to Portland. A canceled connecting flight. Hours spent in airport terminals watching the departure board mock me with constantly changing information. By the time I finally landed in Seattle, I'd been awake for over 30 hours. I'd been wearing the same clothes since the previous morning. My phone had died hours ago. My luggage, which contained my laptop, my change of clothes, and my carefully prepared evaluation notes, had been lost somewhere between San Francisco and Portland. I looked like hell. I felt worse. I took an Uber directly to the Grandview Hotel at 11 p.m. on Friday night. All I wanted was to check in, take the longest shower of my life, and sleep for 12 hours. I walked into that lobby in my wrinkled blazer, faded jeans, and sneakers that had seen better days. My hair was falling out of what had once been a professional bun. I had no luggage. I probably looked like I'd been living in my car. The lobby was beautiful: marble floors, crystal chandeliers, elegant furniture arranged in intimate seating areas. A few well-dressed guests sat in the bar area. Everything screamed luxury and exclusivity. I walked up to the front desk, prepared to quietly check in and disappear to my room. That's when I met Christina Wells, the hotel manager who was about to destroy her own career. Christina Wells was in her mid-40s, impeccably dressed in a hotel uniform that probably cost more than my entire outfit. Her blonde hair was styled perfectly. Her makeup was flawless. She had the kind of polished appearance that came from years in luxury hospitality. She also had the kind of judgmental expression that told me exactly what she thought of me before I even opened my mouth. "Good evening," I said, approaching the desk. "I have a reservation." Morgan Blake. Christina's eyes traveled from my sneakers to my face, taking in every wrinkle, every sign of my hellish travel day. Her nose actually wrinkled slightly, like I smelled bad. Maybe I did. I hadn't showered in over 30 hours. I'm sorry, she said, though her tone suggested she wasn't sorry at all. I don't see a reservation under that name. It should be there, I said, trying to keep my voice pleasant despite my exhaustion. It was booked 3 weeks ago. Suite 412. Christina made a show of typing slowly on her computer, her perfectly manicured nails clicking against the keyboard. I'm not finding anything. Are you sure you have the right hotel? I'm sure. Can you check again? Maybe under Blake Hospitality Group? Something flickered across her face at the mention of my company name. Recognition? Concern? But it was gone quickly, replaced by that same dismissive expression. Ma'am, I don't know what you think. I think I have a reservation, I interrupted, my patience wearing thin. I've been traveling for over 24 hours. My luggage is lost. My phone is dead. I just need to check into my room and sleep. Can you please check your system again? Christina's expression hardened. She leaned forward slightly, lowering her voice but making sure I could hear every word. Ma'am, the Grandview Hotel caters to a very specific clientele. We have certain standards. Now, I don't know how you found out about us, but I don't think you understand the type of establishment this is. The lobby had gone quiet. I could feel other guests watching us. The night auditor at the other end of the desk was suddenly very interested in his computer screen, clearly uncomfortable but not intervening. I understand perfectly what type of establishment this is, I said carefully. Which is why I made a reservation 3 weeks ago and why I'm asking you to honor that reservation. Without any luggage? Without any identification? Looking like... Christina's eyes traveled over me again, making sure her disdain was visible. Well, looking like that? My luggage was lost by the airline. My phone died hours ago. I'm asking you. I'm going to have to ask you to leave, Christina said, her voice sharp and final. This establishment has standards, and I will not have our other guests made uncomfortable. Made uncomfortable. As if my appearance was somehow offensive. As if being tired and disheveled after a nightmare travel day made me unworthy of basic hospitality. You're refusing me service? I asked quietly. I'm protecting our guests and our reputation, Christina replied. She pressed a button on the desk phone. Security to the front desk, please. I could have told her right then. Could have explained who I was. Could have pulled out my wallet, which I still had, despite her implication that I was some kind of homeless person wandering in from the street, and shown her my ID, my credit cards, my business cards that clearly stated I was the CEO of the company that now owned this hotel. But I didn't. Because I wanted to see how far she would go. I wanted to see how she treated someone she perceived as beneath her. I wanted to see the real Christina Wells, the one who showed her true colors when she thought there would be no consequences. A security guard arrived within minutes. Young guy, probably mid-20s, looking distinctly uncomfortable with whatever he was about to be asked to do. Ms. Wells? He said hesitantly. This woman is trespassing, Christina said crisply. Please escort her from the property. Ma'am, the security guard said to me, his voice apologetic. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. I have a reservation, I said to him, keeping my voice calm. My name is Morgan Blake. I own Blake Hospitality Group. We acquired this hotel 3 weeks ago. I'm here to evaluate operations. And right now, I'm evaluating very carefully. The security guard's eyes widened. He looked at Christina, who laughed, actually laughed. Oh, this is rich, Christina said. Now you're claiming to own the hotel? Ma'am, I've been the manager here for 8 years. I think I'd know if the hotel had been sold. And I certainly think I'd know if some... She paused, looking me up and down again. If someone like you owned the property. Someone like you. The condescension was breathtaking. Ms. Wells, I said quietly. I'm giving you one more chance to check your reservation system and honor the booking that was made under my name. After that, I will leave. But I promise you, you will regret how you've handled this situation. Christina's smile was sharp and cold. Is that a threat? No. It's a guarantee. She turned to the security guard. Remove her, now. The guard looked miserable, but he gestured toward the door. Ma'am, please. Let's not make this difficult. I walked to the door. Every eye in that lobby was on me. I could hear whispers, see people pulling out phones to record the scene. This was entertainment for them, the hotel manager putting some undesirable person in their place. At the door, I turned back. Ms. Wells, I said, my voice carrying across the marble lobby. I'll see you Monday morning. 9 a.m. Conference room. Don't be late. I walked out into the Seattle night without my room, without my luggage, without the shower and sleep I desperately needed. But with absolutely perfect clarity about what needed to happen to this hotel's management team. And before we continue with what happened next, I have to pause and ask you, what would you have done in that moment? Would you have told her who you were right then? Would you have let her escort you out like I did? Or would you have handled it completely differently? Drop your answer in the comments below. And make sure you're subscribed because what happens on Monday morning is absolutely devastating. Hit that like button if you think Christina Wells is about to learn a very expensive lesson. Okay, back to the story. I took another Uber to a Marriott 3 blocks away. They had no problem checking me in, despite my appearance. The front desk agent was sympathetic about my lost luggage and travel nightmare. She upgraded me to a suite without me asking. That's how hospitality is supposed to work. I showered for 45 minutes. Ordered room service. Charged my phone. And then I started making calls. First, to David Chen, my COO. How bad was it? He asked when he answered. Worse than I imagined, I said. The manager called security and had me physically removed from the property for looking undesirable. David was quiet for a moment. Did you tell her who you were? I tried. She laughed at me. Said if someone like me owned the hotel, she'd know about it. Someone like you, David repeated, his voice tight with anger. Morgan, that's discrimination? Yes. Terrible customer service? Absolutely. Grounds for immediate termination? Without question. What do you want to do? I thought about Christina Wells' smug expression. Her condescending tone. The way she'd looked at me like I was trash. The way she'd humiliated me in front of a lobby full of guests. I want to know everything about her, I said. Performance reviews. Complaint history. Financial records, everything. And I want you to fast-track the announcement of the ownership change. We're not waiting until next week. We're doing it Monday morning. Monday? That's 3 days away. The previous owners haven't even notified the staff yet. They will now. Call them tonight. Tell them what happened. Tell them we're accelerating the transition. And David? I want every department head in that conference room at 9 a.m. Monday. Including Christina Wells. Oh, this is going to be good, David said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. No, I corrected. It's going to be perfect. I spent Saturday recovering from my travel nightmare and preparing for Monday. David sent me the files I'd requested, and what I found wasn't surprising. Christina Wells had been the hotel manager for 8 years. Her performance reviews from the previous owners were glowing. She was praised for maintaining standards and protecting the hotel's reputation and ensuring only appropriate clientele. But when I dug into the guest complaint records, a different picture emerged. Multiple complaints about discriminatory treatment. A black couple who'd been questioned extensively about their reservation and asked for multiple forms of ID. A Hispanic family who'd been told there were no rooms available despite the hotel website showing availability. A Muslim woman in hijab who'd been followed by security throughout her stay. Every complaint had been dismissed by Christina as misunderstandings or oversensitive guests. The previous owners had backed her up every time, more concerned about maintaining their idea of exclusivity than about providing actual hospitality. The staff turnover numbers told the rest of the story. 70% annual turnover wasn't just bad, it was catastrophic. Exit interviews showed a pattern. Staff left because of hostile work environment, discriminatory management practices, and no support for employees who raised concerns. Christina Wells had been running that hotel like her personal fiefdom, enforcing her own prejudices under the guise of standards. And the previous owners had let her do it because the guests she did allow to stay were wealthy enough to ignore the stench of discrimination. Sunday evening, I went shopping. I needed clothes anyway, since my luggage was still missing. But this wasn't just about replacing what I'd lost. I bought a power suit, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, the kind that costs more than most people's rent. I bought shoes that clicked with authority on marble floors. I had my hair professionally styled. I looked every inch the successful CEO I was. Because Monday morning, Christina Wells was going to see exactly who she'd thrown out of her hotel. And it was going to be the last mistake she ever made there. I arrived at the Grandview Hotel at 8:45 a.m. Monday morning. This time, I looked like exactly who I was, a successful CEO worth tens of millions of dollars, who owned the building she was walking into. The lobby was busy with business travelers checking out, heading to morning meetings. The same marble floors, the same crystal chandeliers. But this time, I belonged. I walked past the front desk where Christina had humiliated me 3 days earlier. The night auditor I'd seen Friday night was still on shift, getting ready to hand over to the day team. His eyes widened when he saw me, clearly recognizing me from the other night but now seeing me in a completely different context. I didn't stop. I headed straight for the executive offices. David had arrived 30 minutes earlier to set up the conference room and brief the department heads who'd already gathered. Word had spread through the management team over the weekend that something big was happening. The previous owners had finally sent out a notification Saturday night that the hotel had been sold, and that the new ownership team would be meeting with department heads Monday morning. Christina didn't know. David had specifically instructed the previous owners not to inform her. We wanted her walking into that meeting completely unprepared. At 8:55, I entered the conference room. 8 department heads were already seated around the table: housekeeping, food and beverage, maintenance, front desk supervisor, sales, accounting, security, and human resources. Christina Wells was not there yet. "Good morning," I said, taking my place at the head of the table. "I'm Morgan Blake, CEO of Blake Hospitality Group. As of 3 weeks ago, we are the new owners of this property. Thank you all for being here this morning." I saw recognition dawn on several faces. Some had Googled the company name over the weekend and knew what Blake Hospitality Group did. Others were just now putting it together. Over the next few months, we'll be working together to transform this hotel into what it should be: a truly luxury property that combines exceptional service with inclusive hospitality. But first, we need to address some significant management issues that have been holding this property back. The door opened. Christina Wells walked in, perfectly poised in her manager's uniform, clearly expecting to be running this meeting. She stopped dead when she saw me sitting at the head of the table in her conference room. The color drained from her face. "Ms. Wells," I said pleasantly. "Thank you for joining us. Please, have a seat." She stood frozen in the doorway. I could see her mind racing, trying to process what was happening. "I don't understand," she said finally. "Who are you? Why are you in our conference room?" "I told you who I was Friday night," I said, keeping my voice professional and calm. "Morgan Blake, CEO of Blake Hospitality Group, the company that now owns this hotel. The woman you had physically removed from the property for looking undesirable." The room went silent. Every department head turned to stare at Christina, who'd gone from pale to bright red. "That was... You didn't," she stammered. "I didn't look like a CEO?" I finished for her. "You're right. I looked like someone who'd been traveling for 26 hours and just wanted to check into the room she'd reserved. I looked tired and disheveled. And you decided that was reason enough to refuse me service, humiliate me in front of your guests, and have me escorted out by security." "I was protecting the hotel's reputation," Christina said, trying to recover her composure. "We have standards." "You have prejudices," I corrected. "And I have documentation." Nodded to David, who distributed folders to each person at the table. "These are guest complaint records from the past 3 years," I said. "Multiple incidents of discriminatory treatment based on race, religion, and appearance. All dismissed by Ms. Wells as misunderstandings. All contributing to the hotel's declining reputation and occupancy rates." Christina's hands were shaking as she looked at the folder in front of her. "I also have employment records showing that this hotel has a 70% annual staff turnover rate, one of the highest in the industry. Exit interviews cite hostile work environment and discriminatory management practices as the primary reasons for leaving." I leaned forward, my voice still professional but with an edge of steel. "Ms. Wells, you didn't just violate company policy Friday night. You revealed a pattern of behavior that has been damaging this property's reputation and profitability for years. The previous owners tolerated it. We will not." "You can't fire me," Christina said, her voice rising. "I've been here 8 years. I've built this hotel's reputation. I know everyone in this industry. If you fire me, I'll make sure." "You'll make sure what?" I interrupted. "That everyone knows you were fired for discrimination? That you called security on your own hotel's owner because she didn't look wealthy enough for your standards? Please? Tell everyone. Save me the trouble." I stood, walking around the table to stand directly in front of her. "You're terminated, effective immediately. Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings. You'll receive your contractual severance, but nothing more. And Ms. Wells?" She looked up at me, tears of rage and humiliation in her eyes. "The next time you judge someone by their appearance, remember this moment. Remember that the tired, disheveled woman you threw out of your hotel came back and owned it. Remember that your prejudices cost you your career. Remember that standards without humanity aren't standards at all. They're just excuses for cruelty." I nodded to the head of security, who'd been sitting quietly at the table. He stood, clearly conflicted but professional. "Ms. Wells, If you'll come with me, he said. Christina Wells walked out of that conference room with her head high, but everyone in that room knew what had just happened. The manager who'd ruled through fear and prejudice had been dethroned by the very person she'd most looked down on. After she left, I turned to the remaining department heads. Now, I said, returning to my seat. Let's talk about how we're going to rebuild this hotel's reputation and create a workplace culture that actually reflects what luxury hospitality should be. The next 6 months were intense. We didn't just fire Christina Wells, we transformed everything she'd built into something better. First, the staff. We promoted the front desk supervisor, Maria Rodriguez, to hotel manager. Maria had been with the hotel for 5 years, and her exit interview from 2 years earlier, she'd tried to leave but been convinced to stay with a small raise, had detailed exactly what was wrong with Christina's management style. I stayed because I love hospitality, Maria told me during her interview for the manager position. But I hated watching how Christina treated certain guests. I reported it multiple times. Nothing ever changed. It's changing now, I said. I want you to rebuild this staff with people who understand that luxury hospitality means everyone deserves excellent service. Not just the people who look wealthy enough. We implemented new training programs focused on inclusive hospitality. We raised wages to reduce turnover. We created clear policies about discrimination with real consequences for violations. We renovated the property, not just cosmetic updates, but meaningful improvements. Better technology. Updated rooms. Modernized systems. But most importantly, we changed the culture. Within 3 months, staff turnover had dropped to 20%. Within 6 months, it was down to 8%, below industry average. Guest reviews transformed. The complaints about discriminatory treatment stopped. Reviews started praising the welcoming atmosphere, the professional staff, the feeling that everyone was valued. Occupancy rates climbed from 58% to 82%. Revenue increased by 40% in the first year. The Grandview Hotel became one of Seattle's highest-rated luxury properties. And I made sure everyone knew exactly why. I did an interview with a hospitality industry publication about the turnaround. The reporter asked about the incident that had started it all. By then, enough staff members had shared the story that it had become somewhat legendary in Seattle hospitality circles. It wasn't an incident, I said. It was a revelation. Christina Wells revealed who she really was when she thought there would be no consequences. She revealed the toxic culture that had been poisoning that property for years. And she revealed exactly what needed to change. Do you regret how you handled it? The reporter asked. Some people have said it was too public, too harsh. I don't regret holding someone accountable for discrimination, I said. Could I have handled it privately? Maybe. But here's the truth. Christina Wells had been getting away with that behavior for 8 years because no one held her accountable. The previous owners enabled it. The staff feared her. The guests she turned away had no recourse. I leaned forward, making sure my point was clear. Sometimes, accountability has to be public. Sometimes, people need to see that there are real consequences for treating others as less than human because of how they look or where they're from or how much money they appear to have. That's not harsh. That's justice. The article ran with the headline, How One CEO Turned Discrimination into a $40 million Turnaround. Christina Wells tried to sue us for wrongful termination. Her lawyer claimed she'd been fired without cause, that my account of what happened was exaggerated, that she'd simply been doing her job by maintaining standards. We settled it in mediation within 6 weeks. Our lawyer presented the guest complaint records, the staff exit interviews, the documentation of discriminatory practices, and testimony from the security guard who'd been there that night and had been so uncomfortable with what he was asked to do that he documented it in an incident report. Christina's lawyer advised her to take the settlement offer. She did. I heard through industry contacts that she'd left Seattle, moved to Phoenix, and was working in hotel sales, not management. No luxury property would hire her after word got out about why she'd left the Grandview. Some people might feel sorry for her. I don't. She had 8 years to change her behavior. 8 years of complaints, of staff concerns, of evidence that her management style was damaging the property and hurting people. She chose to continue anyway. What happened to her wasn't unfortunate luck or a misunderstanding. It was the entirely predictable result of treating people like they didn't matter. A year after the incident, I was invited to speak at a hospitality industry conference about inclusive luxury management. The topic was how to maintain high standards without discrimination. I started my talk with a question. How many of you have ever been judged by your appearance? I asked the room of 100 hotel executives and managers. Almost every hand went up. How many of you have ever treated a guest differently based on how they looked? The hands went down. A few stayed up, brave souls willing to admit their own biases. Hospitality means welcoming people, I continued. The root of the word is hosps, Latin for both host and guest. It implies a sacred relationship, a responsibility to care for someone who has entered your space seeking comfort and safety. I clicked to the next slide, a photo of the Grandview Hotel's lobby. Last year, I was refused service at a hotel I owned because I looked tired and disheveled after 26 hours of travel delays. The manager decided that my appearance meant I didn't belong in her luxury establishment. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Some had heard the story. Others were hearing it for the first time. She wasn't wrong that I looked rough. I did. She wasn't wrong that luxury hotels serve a particular clientele. They do. But she was wrong about something fundamental. That how someone looks in a single moment defines their worth, their means, or their right to be treated with dignity. I clicked to another slide, screenshots of the complaint records. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was a pattern. A pattern that cost that hotel revenue, reputation, and talented staff. A pattern that happened because for 8 years, no one held the person perpetuating it accountable. I looked around the room at faces, some uncomfortable, some nodding in agreement, some clearly defensive. Here's what I learned from that experience. Standards and inclusion are not mutually exclusive. You can run a luxury property that maintains excellence without discriminating. You can have high expectations for service, for amenities, for atmosphere, and still treat every human being who walks through your door with respect. I clicked to the final slide, the Grandview's current ratings and revenue. This is what happened when we chose inclusion over prejudice. Revenue up 40%. Staff turnover down to 8%. Guest satisfaction scores the highest they've been in 15 years. And we maintained every luxury standard, we just added humanity. After my talk, several people came up to share their own stories. A black executive who'd been questioned about his ability to pay at a 5-star resort despite having a confirmed reservation. A woman in a wheelchair who'd been directed to more accessible hotels even though she'd specifically chosen theirs, end quote. A young entrepreneur who'd been assumed to be lost when he walked into a luxury property in jeans and a hoodie. What did you do? I asked each of them. Most had just left. Accepted the humiliation. Moved on. A few had complained to corporate offices and been offered apologies and discounts. None had seen real change. That's why I told my story publicly, I said. Because if we don't talk about these patterns, if we don't hold people accountable, nothing changes. The Christina Wellses of the world keep running hotels, keep turning people away, keep teaching their staff that discrimination is acceptable as long as you call it standards. One woman, a hotel executive from Atlanta, asked me the question I'd been asked a dozen times since the story broke. Do you think you were too harsh? Firing her in front of the department heads like that? I thought carefully about my answer. I think she was given 8 years of chances to change. 8 years of complaints to take seriously. 8 years of opportunities to create an inclusive environment. She chose not to. So no, I don't think I was too harsh. I think I was exactly as harsh as the situation required to send a clear message. This behavior is not acceptable, and there are consequences. The woman nodded slowly. I have someone on my team like that. I've been avoiding dealing with it because she's been with us for years, and she's good at her job in some ways, but she treats certain guests or staff members poorly, I finished. Yes. Then you already know what you need to do, I said. The question is whether you'll do it before she costs you more than just money. Before she costs you your reputation, your talented staff, and your self-respect for knowing it was happening and not stopping it. She thanked me and walked away. I don't know if she ever dealt with her Christina Wells. But at least she was thinking about it. That's all I could ask for. The Grandview Hotel today is one of Blake Hospitality Group's flagship properties. We feature it prominently in our marketing materials, not despite its troubled past, but because of what we learned from transforming it. Maria Rodriguez is still the hotel manager. Under her leadership, the Grandview has won multiple awards for inclusive hospitality and workplace culture. She's become a voice in the industry for how to build truly welcoming luxury environments. The security guard who'd been forced to escort me out that night? His name was James, and he came to my office 2 weeks after Christina was fired. I want to apologize, he said. I should have refused to do it. I knew it was wrong. You were put in an impossible position, I told him. You were a 24-year-old security guard being ordered by the hotel manager. I don't blame you for following orders. I documented it, he said. I wrote up an incident report because it felt wrong. I didn't know what else to do. That documentation helped us establish the pattern, I said. It mattered. I promoted James to head of security 3 months later. He deserved it, not because he documented what happened to me, but because he'd been doing that kind of thorough, ethical work all along. Christina had just never valued it. As for me, I learned something valuable from being thrown out of my own hotel. I learned that privilege is invisible until it's stripped away. I'd spent years being treated with respect because I looked successful. Tailored clothes, professional styling, the confidence that comes from wealth and position. When all of that was stripped away by travel delays and lost luggage, I got to experience how people are treated when they don't have those visible markers of belonging. It was humbling, enraging, educational. Now, when I visit our properties, I sometimes do it the way I did that night. Tired, casual, without advance notice to staff. I want to see how our hotels treat people who don't look like their idea of a luxury guest. Because that's the real test of hospitality. Not how you treat the people you want to impress, but how you treat the people you think don't matter. And before I close out this story, I want to ask you one final time, was I too harsh? Was Christina Wells just doing her job, or did she deserve what happened? Drop your honest opinion in the comments, and I mean honest. If you think I was wrong, tell me why. If you think justice was served, tell me that too. I'm genuinely curious what you think. If this story made you think differently about judgment, about appearances, about how we treat people who seem different from us, subscribe to this channel. We share stories like this every week. Stories about people who got underestimated and proved everyone wrong. Stories about accountability. Stories about second chances and also about people who didn't deserve them. Hit that like button if you believe in inclusive hospitality. Share this with someone who's ever been judged unfairly. And drop a comment about a time you or someone you know was treated differently because of how you looked. Because these stories matter. Not just for entertainment, but as reminders that how we treat people, all people, defines who we are more than any title, any property, any bank account ever could. 6 months after my conference talk, I received an email from an unexpected source. It was from Christina Wells. The subject line read, "You were right." I almost deleted it. But curiosity won. The email was brief. "Ms. Blake, I'm writing this not because I expect a response, but because my therapist suggested I needed to acknowledge some truths. You were right. I did treat people poorly based on my own prejudices. I did hide behind standards to justify discrimination. I did create a toxic environment that hurt people. I've spent this year in therapy working through why I became that person. Some of it was learned behavior from the managers I worked under early in my career. Some of it was insecurity about my own position. Some of it was just plain cruelty that I justified to myself. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that what happened that night changed my life. Not just my career, but my understanding of myself. I'm trying to be better. To do better. I'm working in hotel sales now. No management. I'll probably never manage again. But maybe that's for the best. Maybe some people aren't meant to have power over others. I hope the Grandview is thriving. I hope the staff there is happier than they were under my leadership. I hope you've made it the kind of place that welcomes everyone. Thank you for holding me accountable. Even though I hated you for it at the time. Christina Wells. I read the email 3 times. Then I replied, "Ms. Wells, thank you for your email. It took courage to send. I accept your acknowledgement, though you're right, it doesn't undo the harm you caused. But growth and accountability matter, even when they come late. The Grandview is thriving. The staff is happier. And we welcome everyone. I hope you found peace with who you're becoming. That's all any of us can do, acknowledge who we were, and work to be better." M. Blake. I never heard from her again. I don't know if she truly changed, or if the email was just another attempt to manage her reputation. But I choose to believe that people can grow, even after they've caused significant harm. Not because they deserve forgiveness. But because the alternative, believing people are irredeemably defined by their worst moments, makes the world too dark to bear. My name is Morgan Blake. I'm the CEO of Blake Hospitality Group. We own and operate 27 luxury hotels across North America. And every single one of them has a policy that I wrote personally. We welcome all guests regardless of appearance, background, or perceived economic status. Luxury hospitality means treating every human being with dignity, respect, and excellence of service. Standards are maintained through quality of service, not through judgment of guests. Any employee who violates this policy will face immediate termination. It's printed in every employee handbook. It's part of every training program. It's on a plaque in every manager's office. Because that night, the night I was thrown out of my own hotel for looking too tired and too poor, taught me the most valuable lesson of my career. True luxury isn't about keeping people out. It's about welcoming people in. And then exceeding every expectation they didn't even know they had. That's hospitality. That's excellence. That's what we build. Everything else is just prejudice wearing expensive clothes.